So songwriting is like a team effort in the West, where
Yeah.
there might be multiple people in it.
Yes.
And do they get the royalties and the split in the equal manner? Like if there's a beat producer, there is one who's writing the lyrics, there is one who's making the melody. Does three of them gets an equal share, or it has to be divided accordingly?
So legally it's 50-50, like lyrics are 50, but that's not practice at all. So it tends to be, and when you see a lot of names in the song, because Western pop music is super collaborative, you tend to, if you have the same if you have the same group of collaborators, you tend to split it equally, just because, one day you're doing most everything and another day that person had the idea that you came off of. So just to keep the peace, people tend to do quite equally. And then there'll be times where someone will come in and say, oh, that's really good, but you should change this. And then maybe that person you don't split equal with. You'll maybe give like 5% of the song because they made one little change, But if at least me and my collaborators, we tend to work that, like, okay, if we were in the room and started the song, we're going to split equally, because what we don't want is we don't want ego to get into the way and greed to get into the way. So we don't want it to be like, well, if I take his suggestion on the lyric, if he has a lyric line that's better than mine, I'm just going to say it's not, because then he's going to take my share, right? So we've learned, again, at least in my circle of friends and collaborators, we've learned to just, you make it equal, so ego does not enter the room. The best thing is what's best for the song.
And that's why I think sometimes you have 6 people in the songwriting of a song.
Yeah. It's never really 6 people, in the room. It could literally be that the record company didn't think the production was right, so they send the production to somebody else, and the guy just changes some drum sounds, and now that person says, I won't change the drum sounds unless I'm also credited as a songwriter. So that type of stuff is why you see
all of them become the songwriter, and they get the royalty and
they get the royalty, and they own a piece of the copyright. So in America, that's a big difference. There's not paid for play. That happens in music scoring, but not like in songwriting. So this buyout, it doesn't happen with American artists. It's you get to keep your copyright and you earn royalties and success. But then the downside to it, especially in the streaming era, is that you only get paid in success. So, if the song doesn't work and you spent a week on that song, you get nothing. So, other than maybe a few dollars here and there.
You mentioned 2 great, very important things. One, the lyricist and the melody producer who are doing the melody, they don't actually get paid a fees.
No.
And they only get money from royalties when your song is being played on Spotify or YouTube.
Radio. Yeah, mostly the radio. Yeah.
And that's where you get the money from.
Yeah.
And you might be getting some money for the expenditure for sure. The expenses which you do while making the song.
No.
None at all?
No. I mean, if you travel, a lot of times they'll pay for your travel. But it's backwards that way in those places. It's in the West, it's, if you do something for a film, you'll get a fee, right? But if I'm working with a big American artist, and I'm going to go to the studio on my own expense, and because they're going to write a lot of songs, or they're going to be a part of a lot of songs, and at the end they'll pick what makes the album. So if your song doesn't make it, that's tough luck. That's how it works there.
But the best part which you also mentioned is that all the songwriters owns the copyright of the song forever.
Yes. So all the songwriters own the copyright. So the good part of that is that in success, if you have a big hit, and if you're lucky enough to be the ones that have a hit or have many hits, you can be set for a lot of your life with those hits. And then you own them. So if you ever wanted to, you could sell them to a company, or you keep them and you can pass them on to your kids so they continue to get royalties. And that's the wonderful thing of that,
And in fact, when you deal with the publisher, because generally all the songwriters are signed to a publisher.
Yeah.
And the music label only owns the recording or the master rights of that specific product.
Yeah.
But you own the underlying rights forever.
Yes.
And when you deal with a publisher, the publisher is also not taking away the rights from you. They are just doing the administration in a way.
Yeah, so you can do what they call admin deals and just do administration, where they're basically collecting the money, or you can do a full publishing deal, which in America, the standard is 25-75. So if you split it, it's 50% publisher and 50% to the songwriter. You'll still keep 25% of that publisher share. So you do what they call a co-pub deal. That's what it's called. And so you co-own the publishing with the publisher, and eventually you'll get the piece that the publisher owns. In most publishing deals, depending on what you negotiate, you tend to get that back after a certain amount of years. So and that is called a retention period. So if you have a short retention period, say, 7 years, that means after you're finished your publishing deal, after 7 years, the publisher gives you back their share of the songs. So in that way, it's really quite good. I think being here now and understanding how things are done here, I actually kind of feel that a middle ground is actually a great way to do it, where the writer can have the option. Do you want to take a fee or do you want to keep your copyright? If you want a fee, then great, take the fee, but then we take the copyright for an X amount of years. And if you don't do a fee, then you bet on the song, right?